Great. So we're going to go through the introduction about Bior Chametz and Bedikat Chametz and how it works. And then we'll talk about kashering one's kitchen. And also feel free to unmute yourself or write in the chat any questions you have. I'll be monitoring the chat as we go, but also you can raise your hand or just jump right in. It's good too. I'm very flexible. And I know that sometimes the best learning happens in conversation. So let's talk first about what you need to do to clean for Pesach. And the truth is that when it comes to chametz on Pesach, all you have to do is not have any chametz on Pesach. The goal is that by the time you get to midday on Erev Pesach, you're not supposed to have any chametz. So the question is, what's considered chametz? We're not really supposed to eat or benefit from any chametz. But when it comes to chametz that's around, that would be a problem. It's really only things that are a kizayit or greater. So a kizayit is like the size of an olive. So like it's pretty small, right? Maybe even in there's all kinds of debates over the size of an olive. So maybe it's a little bigger. So it's like, half the size of an Oreo or something like that. And anything smaller than that would be technically not even a chametz, and it would just be considered like a crumb or something that you would never even go to eat. So like a Cheerio is less than a kizayit. I'm not saying you should stash Cheerios on Pesach, but when it comes to kind of the formal prohibition, anything that's really small is not considered chametz. So therefore, if you have crumbs between, the two sections of your couch, that's not chametz. It's gross. Don't get me wrong. You should try to clean those out at some point. But it's not chametz on Pesach, right? No one's going in between their two sections of their couch and scavenging for food. Anything there is dirt, it's dust, it's gross. Even if it's a small piece of bread, if it's less than a kazayit, it's really not, it's not, would not be edible, would not be something that you would need or want. And therefore, it wouldn't even really be considered chametz, especially because we do the act of bitul, where we say that everything should be like the dust of the earth. So with that in mind, it's important to realize that when it comes to cleaning for Pesach, we should be thinking about where are kizaytim of food, where are significant amounts of food exist, where are the possible for those places for that food to be. So if you're in a household or in an apartment where you never eat in your bedroom, you just don't bring food into your bedroom, that's your policy. Some families have that policy, some households have that policy. So then you could do a cursory glance, but you wouldn't really need to check all of the drawers in your bedroom to clean for Pesach because you never bring food into your bedroom. Okay, and so that kind of mindset I think is really important when we think of I wrote here, not spring cleaning. It's not spring cleaning is great, and you should clean your house if this is the right time to do it. That's great, but that's different than the mitzvah of removing all of your chametz and having a house that's free of chametz. And the way of removing a house to get your house free of chametz is about places that food finds itself, whether it's your dining room or your living room or your car or your various backpacks, kind of places where you would find yourself with food. But your bathroom, you don't need to do a special clean of your bathroom on Erev Pesach because I think it's relatively safe to assume that most of us are not eating in our bathroom. Okay, and any crumbs that are on the bathroom floor are not something you would ever touch or eat. So it's good to clean your bathroom however often you clean your bathroom, but that would not be considered part of Pesach cleaning. Does that make sense? That mindset, that framework? I know it's something I say every year. If you've been on my class, you've heard me say it before, and it's probably things that you've read, but I think it's just important to reiterate because sometimes we can otherwise find ourselves going crazy and mopping the underside of the couch, and that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for getting ready for Pesach anyway. It might be good for couch maintenance, but has nothing to do with Pesach. Fantastic. So then what we have is this interesting idea that you're supposed to not have any chametz in your house on Pesach. And the question is, let's say there is no chametz in my house. let's say I just bought a brand new house and I moved in and I didn't bring anything in. I didn't bring any stuff into it. I just came into a brand new fresh house. There's no chametz in there and I don't own any chametz. Do I have to do bedikat chametz? He was just at shul this evening where we discussed this a little bit, right? And we say like maybe that the mitzvah is just to not have any chametz, and that's the way a lot of the Rishonim held, that the mitzvah is just to make sure you have a house free of chametz. How do you do that? You go and find it and you get rid of it. But let's say you already have a house free of chametz. Do I have to do anything? And so according to many positions, you don't. But the way we kind of hold is that not only are you supposed to have your house free of chametz, but you're also supposed to actively participate in freeing and ridding your house of chametz. And therefore, we do that especially on the night of the 14th through the act of bedikat chametz, where we go through and search our house. You, if you're traditionally minded, you're welcome to use a candle and a feather, because that was the thing that they maybe someone gave you or you did with your grandparents or your parents. That's awesome if that's the thing that you want to do. But there's absolutely no requirement to use a feather and a candle. You can use, these days I've been using the flashlight on the back of my phone is really great for searching on B'dika Chametz on Friday, on the night before Pesach, or just a regular flashlight. Anything that will allow you to kind of like go through the nooks and crannies. Many people have the minhag to put out bread, little pieces of bread, sometimes 5 or 10 or 8. I would say that ritual is important to you, then it's great to do. If it's not, then it's okay to skip it. If you feel like you've cleaned your house and you're going to search and just make sure there's not things in specific places. Sometimes from when I do b'dikat chametz, I like to always check my coat pockets. Like that's the time when I check them, because I'm like always bound to find something there, a lollipop, a granola bar, especially because I have young children who are always just giving me wrappers filled with half-eaten things. So like that's always my time. And b'dikat chametz is I check all the jacket pockets and the front zippers of the various children's backpacks. But otherwise, you can say the bracha and then you just search around your house for the chametz. So this is the bracha. We say bracha Hashem Elokeinu b'chalam asher kisham tzivanu al bior chametz, on the removal or the destruction of chametz. So even though at the nighttime when we make this blessing, and you wait till after nightfall to make this blessing, even though we don't do any destroying, we do the searching, and then we also do an act of bitul. Okay, and so bitul is the idea of nullification, and this is the line that we say in Aramaic. Although because you're actually making a declaration, I would say you should certainly say it in English as well, unless you're fluent in Aramaic. So the line is, any chametz or leaven that is in my possession, which I have not observed, meaning I have not seen, have not removed, and do not know about, should be annulled and become ownerless like the dust of the earth. And the way I think about this is that there's a few ways of getting rid of chametz. Okay, one way is throwing it out or destroying it, flushing it down the toilet, or burning it, or putting it in the public dump. Right, all of those ways you have destroyed the chametz. Another way to destroy chametz is through this declaration of bitul, which is to say that by me declaring any chametz that I don't know about or I'm not aware of as null and void and ownerless, that is a way of saying that I now no longer have this chametz. This chametz does not belong to me, and therefore I don't need to worry about the prohibition of owning and having chametz in my possession over Pesach. So you kind of double destroy chametz. We destroy it physically, but we also kind of destroy it like legally or conceptually through this verbal act. And then again, we say it on in the morning after we burn the chametz. So either if you have an environment where you can make your own fire, I don't recommend doing it in an apartment or anything like that. It'll create a lot of smoke. But the shul has a fire in the driveway, or if you want to take a nice walk or have a car, you can go up to the Bronstein's house. The address is in the bulletin, and they do a little burning of the chametz, and also sometimes serve donuts if you get there early enough. So you burn your chametz, and then you recite this again. Any chametz or leaven which is my possession, which I have seen or not, which I have not observed, have not removed, and not know about, should be annulled and become ownerless like the dust of the earth. And at that point, you've either physically destroyed your chametz, or you've kind of legally made this declaration that has made the chametz now no longer in your possession. There is one more way to get rid of chametz. Now, how do we do that? We sell the chametz, okay? And so you can destroy it. You can legally make it like it's not yours, or that it's like dust of the earth, or not considered chametz. Or I could sell it to someone else, and now I no longer own it. So what we say is that you can sell your chametz. The best way to do this is to take any chametz that you feel like you absolutely have to hold on to, either because it has some value, or you just opened a new bag and you don't want to waste it, and you're unable to donate it. That kind of chametz you can sell. There are some people who say don't sell chametz gamor. Like if I have actual crackers or actual loaf of bread, that wouldn't be a thing to sell. Others say that the original minhag, the original tradition of selling chametz, is about chametz gamor. It's about selling silos of wheat or of liquor, things that we are nervous about losing money on, either or going to waste. And so we sell it in order so that it's not in our possession over the course of the holiday. I recommend selling in person, not selling it online. You can come to shul. There's forms. You give, if you come around davening times, you can connect with the rabbi and authorize them to sell the chametz on your behalf. The question is, how does mechirat chametz actually work, right? I think a big question that comes up every year is like, is it even real? Like, is this all just like a pretend loophole game? And so the idea is that chametz, we want it to be not in your possession during the holiday of Pesach. And so the goal is to sell it to somebody who I don't, so that it's in his possession and not my possession. And so that's what we do. And the way it works is I get all of me or one of the other members of the rabbinic team, we take all the forms that we've been authorized to sell chametz on behalf of all the various members of the shul, and we bring them to this guy. His name is Stephen. He's part of there used to be this guy John Brown who did it for many decades in Riverdale, but he unfortunately passed away, and so there's a new non-Jew who buys the chametz of Riverdale, and he's a nice guy. I think he's on some of the Riverdale Facebook groups, and he's very active. And so what he does is he makes a down payment on all of the chametz that we want to sell. So let's say I have 200 people's chametz, and it's worth $10,000 or $100,000. He puts down basically like a penny for each person's contract, and he makes a down payment on that contract, which gives him the ownership over all of this chametz. And then he has the option, after we say in 8 days, if you want to complete this purchase, you're going to have to pay the entire value of our chametz, and then he can choose to opt out, and instead we'll return the down payment to him, and then we're able to return the chametz to everybody else. So the sale is legal. It's very intense. We do the sale in all kinds of ways. There's money that passes hands. There's handshakes. There's signed contracts. We do all kinds of things. But typically, the non-Jew does sell it back. There's a story about Rabbi Tendler, who is a rabbi in Muncie, who every year on the first day of Pesach, he would show up with the non-Jew to someone's house and say, "Where's your liquor cabinet? Mr. John over here wants to come and have some of the liquor which he purchased before the holiday," and as a way of showing that the sale really is real. Okay, any questions on this first half? I know the kashering and cleaning of the kitchen is some of the more exciting part, or more stressful part. But I feel like it's important for us to understand a little bit of the background. Okay, let's jump in for kashering and cleaning your kitchen. So what I want to say is that if you look at the bottom here, this is the key principle for Kashering and cleaning for Pesach. Kibbol o kach polato. The way it is absorbed, that is how it leaves. Okay, so what does that mean? How does that work? The way this concept is that when it comes to chametz, there's two ways we have to be worried about chametz in our kitchens. The first is actual chametz. The first is like actual saucy soy sauce spills and pieces of bread or Cheerios or whatever it is, and that chametz has to be removed. And any place that chametz touched needs to be cleaned, and that's your basic form of cleaning for Pesach. Is to make sure there's no actual chametz in your space. So like, we have like the pantry shelf where we keep the flour. There's always just like gallons of flour on the bottom of that shelf. I don't know how or why that happens, but so like, even though technically that could all be considered like dust of the earth, we make sure to clean up that flour. So that's one kind of chametz. The other kind of chametz that we get very concerned about is the chametz that's absorbed into your various kitchen utensils and kitchen surfaces. And what I mean by that is that you have to imagine a world in which everything is made out of unglazed clay, okay, unglazed pottery, which is very porous, or things are made out of wood, which are very porous. And in that world, if you were to if I don't know if anyone's ever cooked with a wooden spoon, if you cook with a wooden spoon and mix it in a turmeric stir fry, the spoon turns yellow and you can never get it unyellow, right? It gets like the flavor or the color gets absorbed, it gets stained. Okay, and so there's a real sense that your utensils have the ability to absorb kind of chametz that's cooked within them. And we say even though that typically happens for something like clay or wood, we hold halachically that that's true for all of your utensils that are used for cooking in any cooking areas or cooking surfaces. Yeah, Wendy?
Quick question, going back to what you were saying about the flour. And it's a good idea to clean that up anyway. I agree with that. But isn't plain raw dry flour not chametz?
Yeah, it's true. It's true that plain raw dry flour is not chametz on its
That's right.
own, but we do have a chashash that because the way it works for chametz is that if any of this flour came in contact with liquid, then
Right.
it would be considered chametz. And so I'm not, we have like a container that we keep our flour in, we transfer from the bag, and I don't know, maybe sometimes when I dip that cup in, it does have some water on it that gets mixed in with the flour a little bit. So I think it's a thing to be careful and mindful of. But yes, flour on its own is just flour, and you could make matzah with flour, right? It's also the key ingredient for matzah. So it is an important kind of thing to keep in mind as well. And so coming back to the question of absorbing, so the question is how do things get absorbed, and how do you unabsorb it? How do you get it out? And so this is the principle of kibbol o kach polato, that however the chametz got absorbed into the utensil or the cooking surface, that's how we get it out. So if you boil a pot and you make matzo balls in it with flour, or let's say meatballs that are mixed with breadcrumbs, okay, and you cook those in your pot. So now I have the breadcrumbs from those meatballs that are now absorbed into that pot, okay, in like I don't want to say imaginary, but in a conceptual way, or in a potentially technically true way. There's some of that chametz absorbed into the walls of your pot. And so the way that the chametz got in, which was through boiling liquid, that's how you get it out. And that's why we have the concept of hagala or hagala in the old world, right? Which is that you have that in order, anything that was cooked with boiling chametz, the way we get it out is by dipping it in boiling water. So this is why if you have a metal slotted spoon that you always use to stir your pasta, if you want to kosher that for Pesach, you have to dunk it into a big pot of boiling water. This is the thing that you can go to RJC, I think, on the night before Pesach, and you can kosher things. I believe today Yeshivat Maharat did like kashering um, outside the shul in the driveway, but it's also something you could do at home, which is you take a kosher for Passover pot that's very large, like your largest one that you have, and you fill it with water, and then anything that was you used any kind of metal utensil, and some say silicone as well, that you've used to cook chametz with, you can dunk it into that big pot, and then you rinse it under cold water, and then you're good to go. It's kosher for Pesach. And so that's what happens with hot things. And so that's true for anything that is cooked with hot liquid. And so you could do that for your pots and your pots that you kind of fill with liquid. You can dunk those in the very large pot. You can take your slotted spoons and dunk those in your very large pot. You could take even your utensils, your regular spoons and forks that you use all year long that are made of metal, and you can dump those in your pot and then take them out carefully with tongs or with a basket or something like that. And then you can have those to use on Pesach as well. So I know many of us maybe grew up having a whole second set of dishes, but if that's not something that, or second set of utensils, but if it's not something you have or have access to, there is a way to kosher your own utensils as well. So that's true for things that are cooked with liquid. What about the refrigerator? Do I need to use hot water in my refrigerator to kosher it for Pesach? So we say for the refrigerator, no. Kibble o, kach polato. The way it is absorbed, that's how it leaves. So when I have messes in my refrigerator, almost all of those messes, or all of the messes, come from things spilling, either dry or liquidy things spilling. But when that happens, it doesn't. Yeah, you should use a large kosher Pesach pot to kosher your utensils. Um, sorry, for the refrigerator, there's no like absorption that occurs through heat. All kinds of, it doesn't matter, milchig or fleshig. When it comes to your refrigerator, nothing in your refrigerator has absorbed hot chametz. And therefore, I don't need to use hot water or any kind of heat to kosher my refrigerator. All I have to do is clean it off. I don't need to worry that my glass shelves have absorbed hot chametz. All I have to do is just clean that, wash them down with soap and water or with some kind of like abrasive cleaner. I don't like recommend this very chemically. I don't recommend it if that doesn't work for you or if you have sensitivity to the smells or to the chemicals there. But wash it down with soap and water and you're good to go. You don't, here's kind of the rule. My main rule is if you're cleaning, then you don't need to cover. And if you're covering, then you technically don't need to clean. Like it's good to give it a wipe down so you don't have stuff in between the cover. But if you've cleaned your refrigerator well, and there aren't like stains all over it, and there's no visible food, you don't need to now put down tinfoil or plastic covers or what's that wrapping that is like not linoleum. What's the term? The whatever the laminate, right? Like sometimes people use the laminate covers or those kind of that rolly plastic covers. You don't need to use those covers if you've already cleaned it well, because the refrigerator, just you just need to make sure there's no chametz in it. But it hasn't. We don't have to be worried about it absorbing any flavor. What about the countertops? So most countertops, how would they have absorbed flavor? But how would they have absorbed chametz if I'm worried about it? From some kind of hot chametz spilling on it. Okay. And so the way to undo it is to spill hot water on our countertops. This basically works for every kind of countertop with the exception of ceramic countertops. And then there's a few others that are like on the Buy It FAQ list. But anything that's like stainless steel or stone, granite, quartz, all of those kinds of countertops, what you would do is you would boil hot water. You could even take like a clean, you should check the list for corian, I think, because it's corian that's synthetic stone. I'm pretty, if it's not like a pottery or made of clay, then it's totally then it should be okay. But we should check the list for coriander, and if you don't see it, then if you send a text message, I'll look it up for you. But I don't know it off the top of my head. So what you do is you take hot water. You can either take it from that big pot that you've done your hagala with, or you could take a tea kettle that's totally been cleaned out, boil hot water. Yeah, I believe in Pesach magic also. So, so it's a magical holiday. So you take your hot water and you pour it all over your countertops, and that is sufficient to kosher your countertops. The truth is that an alternative possibility, if you can't kosher your countertops, is you don't need to cover them all. But what you could do is you could take use like a Lysol cleaner, surface cleaner, on your entire countertop. And then if food falls on your countertop, don't eat it. Okay, so once you kind of like remove all that, then there's no chametz. But if hot food, like if a piece of chicken falls off the plate, piping hot, straight from the fire chicken falls on the countertop, then I would be, if you were unable to kosher your countertop, I would say that piece of chicken I would, dispose of. But you don't need to, but you would be allowed to you'd be allowed to use your countertops. Just any kind of piping hot food that would touch it, I would forego. Does that make sense? But if you kosher your countertop, then you don't have that problem at all. But even if you're unable to kosher it and you're just able to clean it really well, you can still use your countertop. It's good. Just make sure you use cutting boards to cut all your food and put stuff on plates. And just don't do anything directly on the countertop. Okay, that's how the countertop works. Sinks are similar to countertops in that no cooking happens in the sink, right? There's never fire in the sink. What you do have is hot liquids being poured into the sink, right? Or the hot water that comes from the spigot. And so the same way you would kosher your countertops, you would kosher your sink. You clean out the sink really well, and then you take boiling hot water and you kind of slush it around on all the surfaces of the sink, and then you're able to kosher your sink that way. In terms of the faucet itself never comes in contact with chametz. Or if it does, it's like the gross stuff that's kind of like spilling out of the sponge in the bowl. So you don't need to worry that your faucet is chametz stick. It's not. So all you have to do is clean your faucet well. You don't cover it with tin foil, just clean it well, and then you can use your faucet on Pesach as well. Okay, and so that's true for sinks. So we've covered sinks, countertops, refrigerator. Let's jump over here to urns. The urn or a teapot, if all you've ever put in it is hot water, then you have no reason to worry about it having absorbed chametz. So just make sure the outside and the inside are cleaned well, and you can totally use it for Pesach. It's that simple. Okay, when it comes to let's do the stoves and ovens. So the way stoves and ovens work is the same idea, that how did chametz get in, and however chametz got in, that's how we're going to get chametz out. So how would chametz have gotten into the walls of your oven? Because it would have splattered onto the walls from things that were inside your oven. So the way to kosher, I'll come back to the coffee maker in a second. So the way to kosher, we should add it to the list. I don't know how to turn this on to edit mode. That's an important one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, the stove and the oven. So the oven, if the food kind of splattered onto the sides of the walls, what you need to do is you need to make sure that, first of all, there's no food left in your oven. So if there's crunk on the side of your walls, you want to really try to clean it off. Usually some elbow grease or some of these oven cleaners that you like, or some like a baking soda solution will allow it to come off. You do that, and then you just run the oven on the highest setting for an hour. Some ovens have like a self-clean function, which you're welcome to use, because that's basically what it does, is it puts the oven temperature at the highest temperature for a few hours. If you don't want to do that, you can put find the highest temperature that your oven will go, and once you know your oven is clean, then you can run it at that temperature because no chametz got absorbed at a higher temperature than the highest temperature your oven could go. And therefore, if you heat your oven up to the highest temperature possible, that's going to be good enough to kosher your oven and the racks of your oven. And what you could do is if you have a gas stovetop, you could even take those metal racks that go on top of your stovetop, put them in the oven as well, and you can kosher them as well in the oven all at once. Um, when it comes to pans, so pans are a little bit of a tricky exception because we say that food that is cooked directly on a pan or directly on a rack or on a grate that um, doesn't use any liquid in between or very little liquid that's like dry roasted or just roasted directly on the surface. So there we say that it really that spot where food is directly cooked on needs to have become red hot, libun gamur. It needs to become like a fully red hot temperature in order to um, get it. And that's why sometimes people walk around with blow torches on Pesach. Maybe you've seen like a Chabad video once, or like where someone shows up with a blowtorch in people's kitchens and tries to kosher things. And so for pans, I personally don't use our pans from the year during Pesach because I don't feel like I have a way of getting them red hot. Some people hold, and it's in the Shul FAQ. So if you hold this way, that's great. That if you put your pans in the oven as well on the highest temperature for a few hours, assuming the pans are totally clean, that could kosher them as well. Um, your stove top, I would totally clean, make sure it's perfectly clean, and then you can pour hot boiling water over that as well, the same way you would do for your countertops. When it comes to a coffee maker, so here's the big question with coffee makers is that if you um, is that all like regular non-decaf coffee is you have nothing to worry about for Pesach, and you could even use any of that on Pesach. The problem is that decaf, the way they decaffeinate coffee or a lot of coffees is with ethanol, which can be extracted from either kidney oat or from wheat. And so, therefore, there's a big concern around either flavored coffees or decaffeinated coffees that they might have some chametz components. And if that's the case, then people get concerned with coffee makers. But we say that the same way we hold of the same principle of kibolo kach poloto. The way it is absorbed, that is how it leaves. So what you would do is you would make sure to not use your coffee maker for 24 hours. I think I forgot to mention this before. When it comes to koshering, all the utensils that you use, you want to not use them for that you want to kosher. You leave them dormant for 24 hours before you kosher them. So you would not use your coffee maker for 24 hours. That's probably the hardest part of this.
Did you see?
Yeah. You might have to like buy Starbucks one day, unfortunately, or Moss Cafe, or there's a new place on Riverdale Avenue I saw, Artisan or something. It's like
Yeah, their coffee's really good.
is it good? Okay, I gotta check it out. I haven't been there yet. I do love coffee. I just haven't made my way over there. And your coffee maker, you would clean it out well, and then you can run hot water through it to kosher it. Like you would basically pretend like you're making a cup of coffee, but not have anything in it, and that would function to kosher the coffee machine as well. Because the way the flavor got into it is the way we extract the flavor out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I never use flavored coffees. My question is though, I do put the carafe and the thing that holds the plastic part that holds the filter. I do put those in my dishwasher, or I wash them with my dishes.
Okay,
So
so I would say you could take that
they
carafe.
get washed with a chametz sponge and with other stuff.
Yeah. So this is like a matter of debate. I typically am not concerned about that so much because that sponge is not like edible food chametz on it. It's like gross chametz. It's like it's considered like grossness on it or things that are in the dishwasher together. I don't necessarily feel so concerned about in that capacity for that issue. Um, so I would say that I think it is okay. But you should like do a run through
Yeah.
without it, without anything in it. and after having sat for 24 hours, which I know that could be like, that's the scariest part.
I'll be strong. I could do it.
Yeah. Or like, make an extra batch the day before and put it in the fridge and have cold coffee or
That's what
something.
I was thinking already.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got to get our fix, I know. So, okay, that's stoves, ovens, pots, pans, utensils, countertops, refrigerator, urns, coffee maker, important. Okay, so let's hit hot plates. So I'd say hot plates is the same way. We have the principle of kibol o kach poloto. So the only way food gets absorbed into the hot plate is because you've left food on the hot plate that spills over or stains. And so what you would do is you would clean it well, clean the hot plate well, and then just run the hot plate for a few hours, and that would kind of like unabsorb anything that you've got absorbed in. I find that hot plates are a little bit gross, even they're hard to get fully clean. I don't know if that's anyone else's experience. So I think an alternative way is that you clean it as best as you can. You run it for a few hours, and then I still like to cover it with tin. That is like one of the only things I cover with tin foil on Pesach because I get nervous about it. So if you have a metal hot plate, I would cover it with tin foil because I do feel like it's just hard to get all that other stuff off of it. Um, let's talk about mixers. I hold that you can kosher mixers if you can clean them. Okay, so like let's say you have a Cuisinart. I don't know. We call it the Cuisinart. I think that's the brand we have. Whatever they call like the food processor, um, and is with the metal blades. So if you can get into all the crevices and clean it out, then you would dip every single part of that touches food into your big hot pot that you're koshering, that you're using for koshering. And then you could use your food processor on Pesach as well. There's a debate about hard plastics, about whether you can kosher them or not. I think you can kosher hard plastic things, like things that are flimsy plastic that kind of get gross or don't last very long. I would say you can't kosher, but if you have like a hard plastic, like right, the hard plastic bowl that comes with the food processor, um, that's like a great piece of material. It doesn't stain. It doesn't feel like food gets in it that you can't get out of it. So if you're able to clean it well, then you could kosher that as well. I have hot plates on here twice, so we're gonna get rid of one of them. Um, the next thing is do microwaves. Microwaves are an interesting one. The first thing you need to do is to make sure the microwave is clean, like fully cleaned out. I know that sometimes it's hard with microwaves because if you leave things in for too long, they like do that popping thing, and then the next thing you know, there's like food everywhere. So you clean your microwave well. Then you're gonna take like a styrofoam or paper cup that's heat uh, that's not gonna like burn or get destroyed. You fill it with water and you put it in your microwave for 4 to 5 minutes until the water is boiling and kind of steams up the microwave. And then this is actually kind of like a funny one. You take the cup and you move it over to a different spot and you do it again because the spot where the cup was covered up. And so we want to make sure that spot gets koshered as well. Um, there's Rav Jeff Fox from Yeshiva Maharat, who's a local community member, says that he thinks that you can kosher the glass plate that comes in the microwave in this method. I I've always felt uncomfortable koshering glass like that, and so I typically will just remove that for Pesach and use like a paper plate. Why do I feel uncomfortable with that? So there's a big question about whether you can kosher glass or glass that's been used with heat, with hot stuff. And so there's like various positions on it. And so some people are more lenient. When it comes to glasses that aren't used with hot stuff, let's say you have wine glasses that all you ever put in your wine glasses is, cold or room temperature wine. Um, those things, all you have to do is clean them, or drinking water glasses. All you'd have to do, yeah, that's fine too. Yeah, covering it is great. Um, if you use just cold drink glasses that are only ever used for cold liquids, all you have to do is clean those well, and then you can use them for Pesach. What about the window on the microwave? You should clean that. Make sure it's clean. Yeah,
Cover it. You don't have to.
you don't
You
have to
have to.
cover it. No, anything that you've koshered, you don't need to cover. You only cover things that you're unable to kosher because your goal is that you don't want things to come in contact with them. Does that make sense? Um, I think some people like to kosher their barbecues on Pesach. If you have a barbecue, I don't know how many people on the call tonight have barbecues, but if you have a barbecue, the big question becomes, can you really get the racks clean? But if you can get the racks clean and you can clean out all the stuff that's around the barbecue, then you would just run it on its highest setting for an hour or however long, longer than whatever the thing is that you would cook on your barbecue, and that would be good enough to kosher the barbecue. Some people have a separate set of barbecue racks that they use for Pesach, but even in that case, you would still need to make sure the whole barbecue is cleaned out and run on high for an hour to make sure all the walls are rid of any chametz that's on it. Those are kind of like the main things. I have like 10 minutes here to answer any questions or things that I didn't cover. If anyone has anything else, any other glaring things that I missed or things that have come up for you. And if not, then we can, call it a night. And we have a WhatsApp and the FAQ and all kinds of sheets that have been lovingly put together by various rabbis over the years and really consolidated beautifully by Rabbanit Bracha for this year. And I don't know, Chag Kasher V'Sameach. So what else? Anything else? It's okay if not. No, glad everyone was here. It's nice to learn together. I know I kind of just talked for 45 minutes straight for the most part, but I know we have a lot of ground to cover and there's a lot of cleaning to do. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right.